Under the blazing sun of the Serengeti, a 6-month-old leopard cub sets out on his first hunt. Wide-eyed, clumsy. On this hunt, a moment of youthful curiosity leads to a terrible mistake, tearing him from the protective arms of his mother and leaving him utterly, profoundly alone. One panicked stampede later, the world goes silent. Night falls fast. Hyenas laugh in the dark. For days, the cub ghosts along thorn thickets and crumbling mud walls of an abandoned shack, surviving on puddles and scraps, when his fragile life hangs by a thread. But just when all hope seems lost, a chance encounter offers a glimmer of light, a shot at survival that no one thought possible. Can a human connection be the one thing that brings him back from the brink? And if he survives, can he ever truly find his way back home? In the vast, sun-drenched heart of Tanzania's Serengeti Reserve, a world governed by ancient rhythms and the raw, unsentimental laws of survival, a 6-month-old leopard cub named Kasi embarked on the most significant journey of his young life. It was his first hunting trip, a thrilling and chaotic whirlwind of new sights, sounds, and smells that overwhelmed his juvenile senses. He was a prince in this golden kingdom, a child of a skilled and powerful mother, yet he was too young and blissfully naive to understand the deadly serious rules of the hunt. While his mother moved with a silent, focused grace, her powerful rosette-covered body low to the ground in a display of lethal intent, Casey was a creature of pure, untamed curiosity. His awkward, clumsy steps, driven more by the playful impulse to pounce on a shimmering grasshopper or chase a flitting butterfly than by the instinct to kill, gradually and unknowingly separated him from the protective flank of his mother. The hunt was a storm of motion. A herd of gazelle, spooked by the scent of the predator, erupted into a bounding, panicked flight. The air filled with the drumming of sharp hooves and the low, guttural growls of his mother as she stalked her prey. Casey, caught up in the exhilarating chaos, was mesmerized. He watched, wide-eyed, as the world became a blur of dust and striped hides. In the confusion, he was jostled and knocked aside by a fleeing animal, sending him tumbling into a thicket of tall grass. Disoriented, he scrambled to his feet, the sounds of the hunt now muffled and distant. The familiar, comforting scent of his mother was gone, replaced by the alien smell of crushed wild sage and the sharp, coppery tang of fear in the air. As the African sun began its rapid descent, a spectacular plunge of orange and purple that cast long, menacing shadows across the savanna, his familiar world dissolved into a confusing maze of bushes that obscured his vision. The low, comforting chuffs of his mother, which had been a constant, reassuring presence throughout his life, began to fade with each passing minute. He would let out a small, questioning yelp, but the calls that answered seemed to come from a world away, faint and distorted by the wind. Soon each call faded entirely away, leaving the cub engulfed in a terrifying, profound silence. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at his skin. He turned in a frantic circle, his small head whipping back and forth, not knowing which way to turn. Realizing that he had been well and truly left behind, a deep, primal fear took hold of him. He trembled, his big amber eyes wide with a terror that reflected the vast, indifferent darkness gathering around him, growling softly as if asking for help. He began to wander along the dense edge of the forest, his steps shaky and his heart pounding with a desperate need to find the scent of his kind. But only a profound and unnerving silence answered his calls. That first night alone was a harrowing education in terror. He huddled deep within a thicket of thorny bushes, his body a tight, shivering knot of fear, his ears perked to catch every snap of a twig, his eyes wide with a constant, draining worry. He was tormented by the raw, aching feeling of abandonment, a wound far deeper and more painful than any physical injury, as the distant, mournful cries of antelopes echoed in the dark Serengeti. The whooping laugh of a hyena, a sound he had heard countless times from the safety of his mother's side, now sounded like a direct, menacing threat that sent shivers of ice down his spine. Day after grueling day, Casey's world shrank to a desperate singular focus: survival. He wandered for what felt like an eternity, his paws growing raw and his spirit dimming with each fruitless search for a familiar scent. He found a strange and temporary refuge in an abandoned, dilapidated house near a small village, a crumbling relic of a failed farming attempt from years past. He would hide within its dusty, decaying mud walls during the oppressive heat of the day, watching through the narrow cracks in the wall at the dangerous open world outside. By night, driven by a hunger that was becoming a constant, agonizing pain, he would creep with a desperate stealth towards the village's garbage dumps. He scavenged through the piles of refuse, a place of alien and confusing smells. He often found nothing but the sharp, unyielding textures of empty cans, the strange smoothness of plastic, and the ever-growing, crushing weight of his own hunger. He grew weak, and his beautiful rosette-patterned coat, once a symbol of his vibrant youth, became ragged and matted with dirt. He survived only on the murky, stagnant puddles of rainwater left over from a long-gone storm, his small body racked with shivers even in the heat of the day. His once playful, bounding steps became unsteady and faltering, his legs trembling with a profound weakness that seemed to have settled deep in his bones, his breathing heavy as if all his youthful strength was gone. He lived in a state of constant, heightened fear, fearfully hiding from the menacing silhouettes of scavenging jackals and hyenas, and staring at the distant, warm glow of the village lights, which were as alien and unattainable to him as the cold, glittering stars above. His body wasted away with a horrifying speed until he was a fragile, pathetic frame of skin and bones, his ribs a stark, visible cage beneath his fur. The once bright, curious spark in his eyes began to dull, losing their vibrant spark of life, and the magnificent Serengeti, the kingdom he had been born into, had transformed into a vast and inescapable prison of despair. On the 9th night of his ordeal, his tiny, starved body could take no more. With his last reserves of energy completely spent, he collapsed by the side of a dirt road near a village, barely breathing. He lay there, motionless, a small, forgotten heap of fur and bones as the cold of the night seeped into him. It was there, at the break of dawn, that a group of local villagers on their way to the fields found him, stopping in their tracks, shocked into silence at the sight of his pitiful, skeleton-like body. Summoning the very last flickering dregs of his wild instinct, the cub, though too weak to even stand, managed to bare his small teeth in a final, futile gesture of defense. But the villagers, people who lived in close proximity to the wild, knew he was no threat. They kept a safe distance and sent a runner to the nearest ranger post. Within half an hour, the familiar welcome rumble of a ranger truck was heard approaching. It was led by Jacob, a seasoned black ranger whose name was spoken with respect and reverence throughout the region, a man known for his calm demeanor, his deep understanding of the bush, and his almost legendary success in rescuing desperate animals. Jacob, a tall man with a kind face and eyes that held the wisdom of 1,000 sunsets, took one look at the cub, and his expression softened with a mixture of professional resolve and profound pity. "He is just a baby," he murmured, more to himself than to his team, "and he has fought hard." Realizing the cub posed absolutely no threat, he instructed his team to move with quiet efficiency. They gently netted the frail creature, which was too weak to even struggle, and carefully placed it in a transport cage in the back of the truck. The cub's breath was a faint, almost imperceptible whisper, yet it was still a testament to the fragile life that stubbornly, miraculously held on. At the Serengeti Rescue Center, a team of dedicated veterinarians was waiting. Their immediate examination confirmed what Jacob already knew. The cub was suffering from severe malnutrition and dehydration. They immediately went to work with a focused urgency, administering intravenous fluids to rehydrate his failing body, vital supplements to replenish his depleted system, and sugar water to give him a desperately needed source of energy, while Jacob and the other rangers stood by, watching over every fragile breath the small creature took. For the first few days, the cub's life hung precariously in the balance, but with expert medical care and a quiet, constant presence of human compassion, he began to rally. Within a week, a noticeable and miraculous change had occurred. The cub had regained some of his strength. The dullness of his fur was slowly being replaced by a healthy, vibrant shine, and his belly, once painfully hollow, began to fill out. Jacob took on the role of his primary caregiver, a duty he accepted with a gentle, fatherly seriousness. He would feed the cub himself, his low, calm voice a constant, reassuring presence, encouraging him with every small victory. The day the cub was strong enough to gnaw on his first bone was a moment of quiet, profound triumph for the entire team, a definitive sign of his survival. The days turned into weeks, and under this special, dedicated care, the cub recovered at an astonishing pace. Soon he was strong enough to be moved into a large, semi-wild enclosure, a crucial next step in his journey, designed to help him retrain his natural predatory instincts. At first he was clumsy and unsure of himself, his pounces mistimed and his stalks awkward. But gradually, with the patience and guidance of Jacob and his team, he learned to stalk, to leap, and to pounce like a true predator. His muscles grew firm and powerful. His eyes began to glow with a renewed sense of pride and confidence, and his first youthful tentative sawing calls began to echo through the enclosure as a proud Jacob watched over him. When the veterinarians finally declared him fully recovered and ready, the team embarked on the final, most important, and most uncertain phase of his rescue, to reunite him with his mother. They had a general idea of his family's territory, and they drove him out to a location where a lone female leopard had recently been spotted. With hearts full of hope and anticipation, they opened the transport cage. The young leopard emerged, but after sniffing the air, he showed no signs of recognition. The scent was not right. He looked around, then with a visible and heartbreaking sadness, he bowed his head and turned back toward the safety and familiarity of the truck. Jacob let out a sigh of deep disappointment, but he was not a man to give up easily. They would try again. They drove to a second location 50 kilometers to the east, where another female leopard had been sighted. The atmosphere in the truck during the long drive was tense with a mixture of desperate hope and nervous apprehension. This time, as the cage door opened, the young leopard's entire demeanor changed in an instant. He leaped out, his eyes shining with an unmistakable electric light of recognition, and began running straight towards a specific leopardess who was resting on a rocky outcrop. A weak but deeply emotional sawing call escaped his throat, a sound of desperate, hopeful longing. It was answered almost immediately by a deep, familiar, guttural chuff from the female. It was his mother. She rushed to meet her long-lost cub, a moment of pure, unadulterated joy that seemed to make the very air of the Serengeti shimmer. She began rubbing her great head against his, circling him again and again in a frantic, ecstatic dance of joyous recognition. Watching from a distance, Jacob and his team were deeply moved, their professional composure melting away as their eyes filled with tears as they witnessed the sacred and miraculous reunion. The young cub clung to his mother, his body trembling with emotion, letting out call after call of pure, unbridled happiness that seemed to spread across the vast Serengeti plain. The rangers, their difficult and emotional mission a resounding success, embraced each other, their hearts full, knowing that they had not just saved a life, but had returned that life to where it truly belonged. As their truck slowly and quietly drove away, The golden afternoon sunlight bathed the reunited mother and cub in a warm, ethereal glow. Jacob looked back and smiled one last time at the incredible, powerful sight of the leopard cub running joyfully beside its mother, a perfect and powerful image of resilience, a miracle of love, of life, and of the wild, untamable, and magnificent spirit of the Serengeti.